Hello, BookTube. Sean the Book Maniac, whose channel I have recommended many times. If you're not subscribed, you should rush over en masse and subscribe. Recently suggested something that I thought was fascinating, a great idea. He saw the Spectator's year-end book list and wanted to know what I thought of it. It's a familiar gambit. You'll have seen it in literary journals yourself, where the journal will assemble their books editorial team and a lot of favorite guest contributors, all of whom will talk about the books that stand out in their minds from the previous year, the year that's coming to an end. And it's interesting to me for three reasons. First is that the Spectator's book coverage is really good. Second is that the literary journal where I am the managing editor, Open Letters Monthly, does a year-end roundup like that every year. We'll be doing it for our December issue. And third, and most importantly, on my intergalactically famous book blog, Steve Reads, I do such a roundup as has never been attempted anywhere else in the world. that drunken shouting that you hear is the nonstop construction directly outside my front door. Directly outside my front door. I open my front door and stand in the doorway. If I reach left without moving, if I reach my left arm out, I can collect my mail. If I reach my right arm out, I can touch the back of a guy with a jackhammer. And I asked them yesterday, when do you think this job's going to be done? And they say they've got money for 2 years. So I'll be moving, but that's a story for another video. Every year I do on my book blog, Steve Reads, a roundup of the publishing season that was. And unlike every other journal in the world that does these things, I'm just one person. And yet you're going to find more books, more bare-knuckedly reviewed in that Steve Reads roundup than you will in any other such roundup. It's a thing to mark your calendar for. But in the meantime, Sean wanted me to go through this Spectator list and see what I made of it. And I haven't really studied it, so I thought that'd be a fun thing to do. The first contributor is A.N. Wilson, an odious human being and a disreputable historian, no matter how popular his books are. I have read just scandalous stuff from him, and because he's a poobah, he gets it published. Anyway, and he liked Elmet by Fiona Mosley. It's difficult to convey the full horror of this spellbinding first novel. It's not actually difficult to convey the full horror of Elmet. it's in fact rather easy to convey the full horror of Elmet. It's not this otherworldly thing. I don't know what the critics who are describing it that way are acting like they've never read a novel before. Maybe they haven't. Maybe A.N. Wilson hasn't. Then the next contributor is Francis Wilson, who recommends A.N. Wilson's new Darwin biography, which is garbage. So, so I don't know what to make of that. But Francis Wilson also recommends Marm Darling, 99 Glimpses of Princess Margaret, which is fantastic. It's by Craig Brown. It's a great, weird book, and it's the latest issue of the TLS, the Times Literary Supplement, has a fantastic review of it that is going to mislead a lot of readers, because that review, I forget who writes it, Nicola something or other. If I can remember, I'll link it in the information down below. But that review is a classic example of something that I recognize a mile off because I sometimes write them myself. And that is a review that is clearly more entertaining than the book it's reviewing. And that might mislead people. They might go into Marm Darling thinking, well, it's going to be this good. And the book isn't as good as the review. But let's see. Anna Aslan review or lists Malacca, which we saw on this channel, I think. She lists that English language translation as one of hers. And Flights by Olga Tokarzuk. And Typewriters, Bombs, Jellyfish. I don't know any of these books. I didn't read Malacca, and I don't know either of the others. And that's a thing you'll get on these lists. Because I'm willing to venture that these aren't the first books that came to this person's mind. I'd be willing... On these lists, you'll often get writers who will say, well, you know, the thing I really liked was Wolf Hall, but I can't write that. Everybody's going to write that. So I'll find something really weird. You see that in newspapers and in magazines and in literary journals, these year-end lists where somebody wants to just be weird. They want to pick something they know no one else will pick. Sometimes. Sometimes I just want to say to them, 14 million Frenchmen can't be wrong. Then Claire Mully recommends The House of the Dead, Siberian Exile Under the Tsars. That was fantastic. Oh, good call. And Jeremy Broughton's This Orient Isle, Elizabethan England and the Islamic World, which I didn't read. And also Blood and Sand, about the Suez Crisis, which I thought was great. So that's great. Nice, solid history recommendations. Jenny Colgan recommends Standard Deviation by Catherine Haney. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. And My Absolute Darling by Gabriel Talent. So let's just move on. Jan Morris, the mighty Jan Morris, the writer, the travel writer, recommends Nick Hunt's Where the Wild Winds Are. Okay. I didn't like it. That's Jan Morris liked it. That's also recommends a terrific anthology of Welsh literature down the ages called The Old Red Tongue. Never heard of it. Now I want it. And it's by Francis Boodle Publishers, so I don't think I'm going to get it. Probably is never going to have an American publication, but now I want it. I'll have to look into that, see if they're willing to float me a copy. Richard Davenport Hines, I love these British names, reviews, he lists British Embassies by James Thornton, which I have not read, and Talleyrand in London by Linda Kelly, which I have read and which I didn't particularly like. Oh, and also Hilary Sperling's biography of Anthony Powell, which I did like. I read that and liked it. That's good. He waffles on quite a bit. Then Duncan Followell. I tell you, these British names. The one book I want someone to give me this year is Architectural Invention in Renaissance Rome. Okay. That's all right. Good for you. Then Christopher Howes recommends Thomas Dilworth's book David Jones, Engraver, Soldier, Painter, and Poet, which I haven't read. See, this is going to be a problem with going through this list as opposed to maybe going through the New York Times list, is that a lot of these things have not had American publications. He also recommends Reformation Divided, Catholics, Protestants, and the Conversion of England, which I haven't read. Stephen Bailey recommends Tim Hayward's The Modern Kitchen. But he also recommends Chief Engineer, the man who built the Brooklyn Bridge, which was really good. A very good book. Good. Great. It's nice to be in the running here a little. Oh, good. Okay, he takes it to task. Good. He also adds, the most overrated book was David Eagleman and Anthony Brandt's The Runaway Species, How Human Creativity Remakes the Wild. A composer adding undergraduate cultural gloss to a neuroscientist's patronizing pseudo-technical insights. Couldn't have put it better myself. Then the great novelist Philip Hensher, who you should all read. He, of course, recommends The Sparshalt Affair. Oh, but he also recommends Laurent Binet's The Seventh Function of Language, which I loved. So good. That's great. And he likes John McGregor's Reservoir 13. Boy, a whole bunch of people like that book. I'll have to give it another try. Maybe when it comes out in paperback, I'll give it another try. And he loves The House of Government by Yuri Slezkine. That's great. I have a feeling that The House of Government is going to make it onto a lot of these lists. It's that kind of a book. If you can actually get all the way to the end of it, you're unbelievably impressed. You feel like you're the first generation to read War and Peace. So maybe enough critics did that so that it will make a showing. That would be great. Then we have Mark Mason, who writes about Black Sabbath and the London Theatre. Oh, that's a nice anecdote he starts with. In the mid-1980s, a Woodbury actress wrote a fan letter to Helen Mirren. The star didn't just write back. She sent 2 brand new 20-pound notes, one each for the fan and her friend, saying that she remembered what it was like to be young and poor in London, so the enclosed was, quote, for fun. I love Helen Mirren. All right, let's move on. Craig Rain recommends Marm Darling by Craig Brown. Great, okay. I have a feeling that's going to make a lot of lists, too. It's a very unconventional book. Michaela Wrong, can you imagine going through life with the surname Wrong? Surely the process in the UK isn't any different from the process in the United States. You just go down to the courthouse and pay £50 and get it changed. Can you imagine? Okay. Michaela Wrong recommends a bunch of books on Africa, including Dawn Watch, the Joseph Conrad book by Maya Jasanoff that I loved. But it's impossible for me to get past her name, so I'm just going to move on. Robert Douglas Fairhurst. The two novels I enjoyed most this year are both gay romances with a twist. The first is Sebastian Barry's Days Without End, and the second is The Sparsholt Affair. The Sparsholt Affair will be everywhere. It'll be on all these lists, in the UK anyway. Then Cressida Connolly. I wonder if she's anything to Cyril Connolly. One of the great practitioners of my art. Recommends a pair of collections that I don't recognize. Richard Ingram's recommends a raft of books that I don't recognize. Okay, all right. Well, that's the problem. But we'll do the Times one too for America. Then Mark Cocker recommends Laura Wall's Henry David Thoreau, which was from the University of Chicago Press and was really good. He is still arguably the finest writer on nature in the English language. Arguably, yes. Yes. I could argue against that. Yes. And she also recommends Richard Prum's The Evolution of Beauty. The subtitle is How Darwin's Forgotten Theory of Mate Choice Shapes the Animal World. What a book that was. How amazingly thought-provoking. About how it's not just, you think Darwin, you think survival of the fittest. This book is what about survival of the prettiest? What about all the animals that choose a mate because of how good the mate looks, regardless of whether or not the talons are as big or the fins are as big? Utterly fascinating stuff. Made me want to go back to the root book of Darwin and read it all over again. Wow, that's great. I hope that gets mentioned on other lists. That would be wonderful. Claire Loudon recommends the oh wow, out of nowhere, she recommends Ursula Le Guin's The Left Hand of Darkness. She doesn't mention the Library of America box set. Just mentions it and praises it. Good. Wonderful. Oh. She finishes her paragraph with, not worth the hype? Nathan Hill's The Knicks. Yet another big American novel that failed to deliver. I don't agree. I've heard sentiments like that on BookTube, and I don't agree. It doesn't fail to deliver. Let's see here. Peter Parker does a pair of UK-only books that I haven't read yet. And that's it. It says more books coming next week. So I'll look over the list next week with a little more detail than I did this time, because there's no point in me saying haven't read it. I have enough booktubers to do that. But this does give me the idea to do to go over some American lists and see a little bit better showing, and also of course it gives me the prompting that I need once again to mention that the only one of these lists that's truly worth devoted attention is the one on Steve Reads, which is coming up. It will be a large chunk of the month of December. One new list every day. But in the meantime, I'm going to sign off and see if I can outweight this block of sunlight, and then I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.